Well, hey, everybody, I'm Brian Blackmore with Church Production Magazine and DAVE.video. Well, one of the biggest technical challenges facing churches is finding an efficient way to marry a range of audio and video sources and deliver the right audio mixes with those video feeds to the right destinations. For instance, a lot of churches use Dante audio, but largely have SDI backbones in place, and marrying the two can be complex. So here to help us dig into this challenge and provide some insights and solutions that are going to help bridge the gap, I want to introduce Bryce Button. He's the Director of Product Marketing with AJA. Bryce, say hi to everybody today.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, welcome. Also, Joe Parizic and David Roach with Strata. Strata's an AV integrator based in Atlanta. So Joe and David, say hi.
Greetings. Thank you, Brian, for having us here.
Yeah, great to see you, Brian. Thank you.
Bryce, let's start with you. So give us some more context into the scenario I wrote out earlier and tell us how this challenge is shaping workflows in churches.
Yeah, so AJ has always been a bridge building company. We started out with little mini converters that became very popular as throwdowns and tended to fix single point-to-point translations, whether that was connectivity types or formats or rasters, that type of thing. And then over time, of course, we got into rack frame cards, and then Open Gear came along from Ross, which is a great platform in a rack frame form factor that allowed a bunch of vendors to share a frame and use a simplified control system to put a lot of different solutions into a single box and allow these things to connect, which also allows for a lot of density. So we started bringing over initially things like our fiber cards, some of our more popular HDMI from SDI converters, which I know the AVI guys are very familiar with when it comes to driving images to screen. Then as you deal with more live events, we've done a lot of concert stuff, and then we've seen a big rise in church environments, synagogues, etc., where they're doing a lot more at the event, and they're also trying to get a lot of stuff out to others, whether it's streaming, etc. So it made sense to look at, the real challenges on the ground. And I think your initial description here was really solid. How do you deal with all these audio sources? Because they're big bands these days. There's, a lot going on in a house of worship environment and a ton of channels because you're trying to isolate everything from drums to various mics, effects, the rest of it. And then, of course, bringing in the sermons and etc. So it's actually a lot of audio sources. So when we looked at that environment in particular, we realized that Dante is already one of the most popular audio over IP sort of formats out there. And one of the reasons is it's very easy to configure and control. You don't need to be an IT genius, because IT work can be a bit terrifying for people who only spend a few days a week working on these services. So that simplified things. So we decided to have discussions with Audinate, who sit behind the whole Dante platform, and figure out where we could go. And density really was part of it. So we introduced the OG Dante card late last year and started getting out in mass as this year has worn on. And a single card here can handle 32 channels of audio in and out. And the whole point is to marry this to those SDI infrastructures. So whether you've got sources from cameras, whether you're dealing with the mixers, the switches, be able to bring that great channel density in, assign the channels where you need them to go, and just simplify things. And I think from what we've seen here with David and Joe, they've already started to look at this and figured out how to integrate this into the system. So I think it's good at this point to let David and Joe talk about that a little bit in the practical sense.
So David and Joe with Strata, tell us a little bit about some of the projects that you've implemented, these sort of solutions that Bryce just laid out.
Well, it's funny. We've been working on this exact application for quite some time. And it's always been a multi-step process to get from the Dante world into SDI. Either you had to go Dante to analog device and then analog embedding, which is costly and complex. Sometimes it was a 3-step process. It really depended on the facility. And a couple of years ago, we found a standalone box from a very obscure company that did this in a single channel environment. And we were hoping for a US manufacturer to come along and do something, well, in open gear. And sure enough, here comes AJA, and we got the first ones out. We just had to have them because they solve so many operational and engineering problems in one small product. It really, really is a benefit to us as a design group and as a customer for their operational flexibility.
Yeah, we were working on a project that installed late February, early March. That the timing was perfect for this product. So we needed. The church had a major Dante installation, and so this was perfect timing for us. And so we installed 2 of the cards there in their open gear environment, and worked great right out of the box. The great thing is it really did, as Bryce mentioned earlier, it's bridging the video and audio worlds in that facility. Well, all of them really, but in this case, the cards just show up in their Dante controller. They say, hey, I want to send this output from the mixer or this microphone to that embedder, and off it goes. So it's a great simple, as simple as that can be, application.
So give us some more specifics there, David. Like, so they're trying to, you're taking audio off of their front of house mix and sending it to another mixer for streaming mixing, or give us some more specifics.
Yeah, sure. So what we did in this case, we set up. We have 2 of the cards, so we have 4 possibilities to embed there. And so what we do is we've got. Joe may have to help me with specifics, but we've got a video server recording. We've got streaming output. We've got a couple of ISO recorders, and so in that case, we can take. All of those are connected, and actually via routing, we can send whatever to those embedders video wise, and then the church in this case takes their output. They have a broadcast mix. They have a separate broadcast mix, and they take that and send it straight to the stream, and also they do straight to their server. So to do their program record, their line cut recording.
Yeah, it gave us the flexibility that whatever we assign video-wise, the facility already had audio somewhere on their Dante system, so it didn't make any sense to develop a separate audio switching layer inside the production facility when all of the audio already exists in the house audio environment. So with a separate audio for video mixer, that and the availability of every mic on the system, every auxiliary send on the system, everything in their facility already being on Dante, you had every signal you possibly want to embed into those SDIs, depending on what you were feeding those SDIs. So in a 4-channel environment, you had the main feed going to the web. You had a 1 or 2 switched ISO feeds, which could contain any type of audio you needed. Plus these guys can demux as well if you wanted to send something through that to go right into Dante. And so it has proven to be a product that will find its way into virtually every install we have into an existing Dante environment.
Yeah, and I think one of the great benefits there, Brian, in terms of Dante, that's good for folks to know, is it's really low latency. It's really high quality audio. There have been other attempts at density with things like MADI and so on, but that can all get pretty complex. And I think the great benefit here is the ease that David and Joe are describing. But yeah, and it's literally like working with a spreadsheet in terms of routing, and folks can name these sources. So if you've got I know a lot of bands in the church environment, especially during the COVID phase, were going through things where they were recording some of these things midweek, sending the audio off somewhere remote, and then doing the mix, against video for it. The fact you got low latency, if you're still in a scenario where things are still a bit physically restricted, control of all of this can be done remotely through web browsers and the rest of it. So it really helps to get around, I think, a ton of different problems. And as they described, we've never been a fan of having folks have to rebuild everything from scratch. Some of the IP approaches today expect a heck of a lot of investment and almost starting from scratch to build a system out. And at AJA, that is definitely one of the items that we've always felt we've needed to bridge, is take the best of what's out there, find a way for it to get from one to the other, embed, mix and match, and give folks as much control as you possibly can.
Brian, from the installation and design standpoint, for us, it's great, and honestly, really, in the end, for our clients, it's a great thing, because what we're doing is eliminating points of failure along the way. In any system installation, you try to use as few pieces of equipment as you can to get the job done. So in this case, we're not taking their Dante signal, converting it to analog, and then putting it into an SDI embedder, or converting it to AES and embedding it, or MADI, or whatever. We're eliminating that whole step. So we're going straight from their Dante network to embedding. And so that eliminates, for us, it makes the design easier, makes the installation easier. It's a much cleaner installation for the customers. For our clients, it's a thing where they don't, there's another piece of equipment they don't have to troubleshoot if something goes wrong, so if they can't route whatever they think. So that's a great thing.
That's one of the reasons we chose 12G SDI, Brian, as well, as we were waiting to have that solid SDI connection too, because, when 4K stuff started out, and obviously we recognize most people are delivering in HD today, but the desire to move up to 4K is out there. And when you were doing quad 3G SDI, which is the initial standard, the amount of points of potential failure and trying to trace down which one of the 4 quadrant cables might be going wonky on you where, it was just way too much stress for people dealing with sort of live recordings especially. So 12G SDI was definitely part of our thinking, because we started to look at Dante quite some time ago. But we wanted to be practical about it. You got a single cable, you know exactly where the problem is, if there is a problem. And again, it's capable. It means you got more bandwidth anyway if you're doing deep color, or maybe even introducing HDR over time, all those kind of things. You sort of pre-position to be in a good place.
So what advice would you guys have for churches moving forward? Those that are planning a new video infrastructure or distribution networks or workflows? Like, how does this all fit into churches that maybe, a couple months or a year or more out from, from moving forward with a new system or a new workflow?
Well, Dante, I don't know, we've done an audio system in recent memory where there wasn't some Dante component of it, and it's become the standard for video transport in churches. Audio transport, excuse me. And so I think you've, and it's not unaffordable, and it's the same with SDI. SDI is very affordable. People get a little bit skittish about it. They know HDMI, they know other things, but SDI is great. So the SDI Dante world is that's a great world to be in. It gives you a ton of flexibility. The reliability is there. It's all built for broadcast, really, and that's super reliable. I think that's the way I'd be looking if I'm a church guy looking at that, thinking this is where they need to go. That's what I'm looking at. Those two technologies.
And then it's easy pass on, I think, Brian. Once you got all that stuff together, you simply add a streaming card of some kind. We have little standalone products that do that very simply if you need to. But reliability really is key. we've seen a great merging, as you know. I've helped take AJ aggressively into the AV space because over time it was becoming more and more obvious that the concept of what a broadcaster is has, expanded greatly. The OTT need or streaming need was always there, and this period that we all just lived through and still coming out of has certainly accelerated the demand for that. And for the how environments, you're always going to have an elderly population that can't always attend a service. You've got folks around the globe that are traveling. It just makes sense. So once you're in the OG format, you're in the frame, all the equipment ties together so simply and easily. And even if you're going a little bit outside of the particular frame, there's some great streaming gateways that we have today already, like Bridge Live, that can get really sophisticated. But you can make it as simple as possible too, with a straightforward H.264 encoder. So yeah, it's kind of a fun time period, honestly, because if you look at everything that's going around in the bigger sphere, and I'm sure we'll start to see this with some of the House of Worship stuff as well. I mean, there's gaming engine technologies that are coming into all of this, the ability to expand spaces, do virtual sets. If you've got folks stuck at home, no reason why you can't start jumping into Unreal Engines and combining all that kind of stuff to really get sophisticated without much pain. And I think that's the key thing. We should be trying to strip all the pain out. And for most people, they want to be creative at the end of the day. A lot of staff for House of Worship environments are putting in a lot of volunteer time. And you just need to make it simple for folks. And I think that's a key thing to remember as you talk about these build-outs and prepping for the future. You can buy a lot of good technology today that's a fifth of the cost of what it was 3 years ago. And you can do some nice sophisticated stuff. And again, it's, as David and Joe are sharing here, the simpler the better. The old KISS standard is still a standard. So it's worthwhile.
Brian, I want to add something that we sort of touched on earlier as a bridge device, this OG Dante card. A lot of times, it not as much as it used to be, but there are video specialists, there's audio specialists, but certainly in churches, and this, you've talked to enough church folks that there are guys that understand audio much better than they understand video and such. Back and vice versa. The deal is this thing lives in the middle of both worlds. So the cool thing is the video guys understand it as an embedder or de-embedder. The audio guys understand it as a Dante device. So that's kind of a cool thing. There's not any mystery to that for either side of this. So if the video guy says, "Hey, I need a program feed with the output of the front of the house instead of the broadcast mixer," the audio guy goes in his Dante controller and goes, "Hey, okay, switch, done,"
And that's an environment that they're used to operating in.
Yeah, that's right. It's very familiar to them, yes.
And there are other additions you can do in the OG space as well. For instance, Brian, for House of Worship environments, we've got things like scan converters, which is our ROI series, and ROI stands for region of interest. And that allows you to bring in computer sources, So if there is a sermon or even lyrics, etc., that are being created on a computer system, you can literally plug that in as a source. And of course, most of the time it won't have audio, and you can take the embedded audio from the Dante stuff. And the ROI product's already gotten you to SDI, really simple. And then you marry that again through the Dante card. So there's so many options. It's basically like getting a bigger puzzle with more pieces, and it's just easy to connect them. And I think that's really advantageous.
Bryce, you started to talk about the future, and you talked a little bit about the Unreal Engine and virtual sets and things like that. Could you guys talk a little bit more about what the future might look like with regards to audio and video production from your vision, from your perspective in the House of Worship market?
Yeah, we see a lot of things going on. I think when you're trying to do things we've learned from COVID, quite honestly, let's say you've got a sermon that wants to actually involve more than just the single minister. They want to bring in witnesses, all sorts of things. They could actually be in completely different environments. You could get getting camera source from someone within the physical church, and the other person might be even on a mission elsewhere in the world, and joining them onto what looks like a virtual set or a virtual church environment becomes pretty simple with this stuff. So effectively, the technologies have gotten so sophisticated that a simple green screen behind you, even what have you, they can both be keyed in and look to be sitting and talking to each other, even though they're a world away. So I'm using an extreme example there with the mission, but I think you get the point. It allows you to expand the amount of folks that are congregating. And I think outside of the normal service, that can be something for the smaller group stuff that tends to get done, right? You tend to have various groups that address different topics. And if not everyone can be there, it just provides opportunities to present that group together for viewers that want to watch it remotely as well. So, we've seen a lot of this stuff jump to all sorts of levels within the production community right now on the feature film side. Again, pro AV technologies marrying production cinematic technologies is going on. So you've got the quality of the screens out there today in the AV space with LED displays with very fine dot pictures, decent enough to literally not have to do green screen, not have to go put graphics on, but literally just drive a recorder or player to create that screen behind folks, etc. It's been utilized a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that kind of thing come in even for the church bands. If you want to change that background behind them.
Yeah, that's already happening. Actually, we've done that. We've done that recently. Church in Houston, large LED wall behind center stage. We're doing that in the church out in Phoenix that we're working on right now, which will also have the OG Dante card in it, by the way. But those LED walls as backgrounds that are changeable, change the mood, change the atmosphere. Just right out of your computer, whatever you're using to feed it, is a big. It's a great thing. That's definitely a trend, and because as Bryce said, the quality of the resolution of the LED walls is really something now. So they look great on camera.
David, is that for like during a live service, or were they shooting like a music video with the LED wall as like the virtual set?
We've seen both, actually. The one that we just did in Houston was they used it during a live service. And Joe was out there. He can tell you more about it. It was one of the things I think was really cool before he takes over and doesn't let me talk. Is that they used it for they're using it. It was cool. They thought it was going to be a thing for the younger crowd, and they would really like it. But it's also part of their more traditional service. Well, the first Sunday, the pastor in the traditional service said, "Hey, I'm going to do something with that." So they did these graphics where he had the graphics on the screen beside him, and he interacted with those. So it was on the big LED walls. It was this gigantic display, where he's talking about his sermon points in there, and it was really pretty neat. So, Joe, you were there to help set it up.
The funny thing is, it's running the gamut between, I'll say, scenic design and artistic support. I've seen an LED wall used in a very, very, very traditional church to replicate the front of the church day in and day out. Inside of the sanctuary, these LED walls are running anywhere from 8 to 25% of their capable brightness. And so what happens when you walk by this gorgeous sanctuary that everybody is accustomed to seeing all this fine woodwork and all this ornate stuff, and they walk by and they see a big black rectangle during the week. So we've worked in a couple of cases to make sure that they put up a graphic element that looks like the front of the church. So day in, day out, people walk by, they see the front of the church. They don't think of this big void sitting there. And you can easily decorate for Christmas, holidays with that, or carry it to the other end where it's an animated graphic support for the music that's going on. So you can run the gamut there, and it can be very practical and not just an electronic whiz-bang thing to get everybody's attention. And sometimes the best use of technology is something that doesn't attract the viewer to itself. It simply supports what's going on.
It essentially disappears, or it's intended to disappear.
Right.
Right.
It's augmented, I think that's key.
Brian, you asked some other trends. One of the things we're seeing too is it's still, there's some development going on in this world, but as far as control side of it, but cameras, small cameras that are wireless, broadcast level video, that's another one we're working on right now at one of our installations, and they're going to have 3 cameras that are wireless, so the guys can just run around wherever. So this one church will be doing things in outside of their worship center while they're during the service, and so they're going to have live cut-ins, I guess, is kind of what the way they're looking at that. But that's a big deal. The technology's there to do that now. It's really solid, and you can just run around with, the small cameras and just freely roam, no cables.
Bryce, you want to have the last word?
No, the great news is I've been thrilled. This is one of those projects behind the scenes I've been involved with for quite some time. It's been fun to watch the development. The partners like Ordinate, working with them, the partners like Open Gear, and then, of course, seeing it roll out and finding that, we hit the mark on this one, in terms of what David and Joe are seeing in practicalities. And it's just great to see it to come together. The only plug here I'll give in terms of taking a look at AJ.com is we've been active in creating solution pages for the last few years. And we did add one recently on remote workflows, which I think is of great interest to your audience. And it covers everything. When you're on site using fiber, if you can do it just to create a bit more distance, to move the SDI signals, everything from that to just using our little U-taps to plug in. Right now for this interview, I've got a U-tap coming from a little Sony HDMI camera, and it's just using the OS, as the video input. So it's worthwhile looking at that stuff if you're still struggling to deal with what can be a difficult environment for perhaps a number of months to come. But there's a lot of practical solutions there, and I think one of the biggest things to say about all of this is you can run these setups all off a single laptop. We've made sure that a lot of our products, and one of the attractions of the Open Gear environment again was that you can control everything just through web browsers, and that's really key. Simplifying it, bring all this equipment together. All our major products today have basically got built-in web servers, so you do not have to be local there or worrying that someone has accidentally clicked the wrong button on the front of a unit or something. You can really keep it together very simply. So just a visit to aj.com, take a look there, and then to find great resellers, distributors like David and Joe. We have a where to find button, so you can always find someone locally. We always prefer that our clients work with folks in their regions so they get immediate answers. It's a better approach from our point of view, because the whole point is integrators like David and Joe, they value add. You're not just buying a product, right? You're buying their experience when it comes to designing these systems, putting these things together, and you have someone locally that can assist you, during the early going. So I think it's worthwhile taking a look at all of that.
Okay. Thank you, Bryce. I want to thank all 3 of you, David Roach and Joe Parizek with Strata AVL based in Atlanta, and Bryce Button, Director of Product Marketing with AJA. So again, thank you to the three of you, and thank you for joining us today.